Let me tell you something that'll grab you. Right from the jump, I bought my dream property, and not even an hour later, I was looking down the barrel of a gun at my own front gate with a bunch of guys in tactical gear telling me I wasn't allowed to set foot on land I just paid for. Yeah, that happened. I mean, have you ever signed the deed to a place, drove over with your heart pounding, ready to start a new chapter? And the first people to greet you are acting like you're trying to sneak into Area 51. That was my morning. Welcome to Lakeview Dairy, I guess. Let me back up a sec. 30 minutes before all this, I'd walked out of the title office grinning like an idiot. Everything was perfect, the signatures, the stamps, all the legal junk. For the first time since I left high school, I felt like I finally knew where I was headed. 12 years as a firefighter in Minneapolis, and now here I was about to turn an abandoned dairy on a picture-perfect lake into a sustainable farm. The October fog was curling over the water. I had my trusty Ford loaded with paperwork, and for a minute everything felt right in the world. You know that feeling when the future finally seems to click into place? That's what I had right up until I spotted the three guys dressed like extras from a SWAT movie standing at my gate with CSS stitched on their jackets. I was halfway to laughing, thinking this was some sort of practical joke, but their faces said otherwise. The lead guy, Hammond Silverhair, a face you'd expect to see barking orders, asked for my ID and authorization like I was breaking into Fort Knox. When I handed over my deed, still warm from the printer, he looked at it for a grand total of 3 seconds before shoving it back at me and telling me this was a restricted area under private security contract. Civilian. That's how he said it, like I was a little kid at the grown-ups table. Then he radios in professional gear, encrypted comms, the whole 9 yards, saying there's a civilian claiming property ownership at the main gate. They told him to maintain perimeter security, no access to the extraction zone until clearance was confirmed. Extraction zone. On my farm. Something was seriously off. So I tried to stay calm. Look, I said the old owner died 2 years ago. I just bought this place. I'm not here to cause problems. But Hammond and his guys formed a wall between me and the lakefront. Through their gear, I could catch flashes of movement, more people, more equipment, all dressed for war. He handed me a business card, Consolidated Security Solutions. No mention of Midwest Agricultural Holdings, the name they kept throwing around, nothing that explained why my legal ownership suddenly meant nothing. I'll be honest, it was all I could do not to just peel out of there and pretend this wasn't happening. Hammond finally leaned in close and dropped the line that had haunted me for weeks. Some complications are better left to professionals. The way he looked at me like I just walked into something way bigger than myself, let's just say it chilled me. As I backed down the dirt road, I watched them loop heavy chains and slap commercial padlocks on my gate. Not only was I not getting in, they wanted me to know they'd fortify the place against anyone trying. I spent the whole drive back running through every scenario in my head. 3 years of research, saving, dreaming of this life, and somehow I'd landed smack in the middle of what exactly? Private military, federal protection, organized crime. None of it made sense. I'd never seen anything about Midwest Agricultural Holdings during all my paperwork. No environmental notices, no federal oversight, just a clean title and a lot of hope. My first call was to Donna, my real estate agent, the type who's more friend than agent by the time you close. She answered all bubbly, asking if I'd gotten the keys she left. When I told her what happened, she went quiet, real quiet. Then I could hear her rifling through papers, muttering about no mention in the documentation, promising to call the title company. While I waited outside a coffee shop, watching life carry on like nothing had happened, I kept looking over my shoulder, half expecting a black SUV to roll up and grab me. Donna called back flustered, telling me there was some confusion about undisclosed security arrangements and a supposed agreement from the old owner. But the guy was dead, who was signing these things. She said they'd never found liens easements, nothing that should prevent me from owning the land. Except clearly something had. I went straight to the county library, heart pounding, hands shaking, and started searching records for this Midwest Agricultural Holdings. What I found made my blood run cold. The company had only existed for 6 months, run out of a P.O. box by a shell legal firm. And 4 months ago, someone had filed a protective services agreement for my property, signed by the old owner's supposed representative, giving Midwest exclusive security jurisdiction for environmental protection. Problem was, the old owner had been dead 2 years. They'd forged documents, planted them in official records, and used them to justify turning my dairy into their private fortress. Someone with real access had slipped those files into the county system, backdated all the right stamps, except the digital fingerprints didn't lie. I was dealing with fraud deep pockets and people who could rewrite government records like they owned the place. My phone rang from an unknown number. It was Hammond, somehow already aware of my research, telling me I'd be picked up for a consultation the next day, and oh, by the way, I shouldn't miss it. Suddenly, everywhere I went, I was looking over my shoulder. When I met with an insurance investigator, I trusted one of those sharp, no-nonsense types from my firefighter days. She went through my paperwork and shook her head. No shady insurance claims. Nothing that fit the usual scams. Whatever they're after, Garrett, they already got it, she said. But as I left, I noticed a black Suburban tailing me, the same kind of SUV I'd seen out at the farm. They were surveilling me, photographing my plates, probably recording my calls. This wasn't paranoia. This was a full-court press. Then out of nowhere, I got a text from an anonymous number. If you want answers about Lakeview, meet me at the library tonight, alone. Yeah, I know it sounds like a setup, but desperate times, right? That's how I met the retired DNR officer, a wiry old guy with a limp and a pile of maps. He laid it out. My land sat on a critical junction of the underground water system, feeding the whole county. Whoever controlled it controlled millions in water rights, agriculture, industry, the works. Only it wasn't just water. He'd seen equipment being moved at night pumps, chemical processors pulling not just water, but valuable minerals from the aquifer. And if they got caught, the fines would be massive. "You're not just fighting for your land, son," he told me, looking me dead in the eye. "You might be the only thing standing between them and a disaster for the whole region." Just then, I swear, I caught someone moving in the stacks, maybe watching us, maybe just a trick of the light. That night, I barely slept. By dawn, I had mapped out every legal loophole, every surveillance blind spot, and every step I'd take if I had to document what was really going on out there. Hammond's consultation invite arrived all proper on thick letterhead, but the threat was clear. Come in and play ball or else. I spent the drive to their glass and steel downtown headquarters, trying not to look scared, but man, my nerves were shot. Inside, 3 people waited: the director of legal affairs, a technical consultant, and of course Hammond, now in a suit, but with the same cold stare. They laid out an offer, $15,000 a month for 10 years, plus a $50,000 signing bonus if I'd just sign away my rights to the land and agree never to visit. Almost $2 million just to stay away. Their presentation was all shiny slides and satellite images claiming some partnership with the University for Environmental Research. Problem was, their answers didn't match the equipment I'd heard about. And every time I pressed them for details about the extraction systems, the permits, the real purpose, they got cagey. Hammond started leaning forward, his perimeter secure radio crackling in the background like punctuation. When I pushed back, said I needed to know what was happening before I'd even consider their offer, the mood shifted. Suddenly, the director's smile vanished. "This offer expires tomorrow. After that, your options get a lot more complicated." Hammond chimed in. "Some situations require immediate resolution. It was clear: cooperate or else." I went home with that ridiculous check burning a hole in my pocket. The next hours, I scoured every law, every filing I could find. Turned out CSS had no federal security licenses, no permits for their gear, no environmental assessments filed. Buried in the incorporation paperwork, I found mention of mineral extraction, not research. This was a scam, and a big one. With a plan forming, I used my firefighter experience, mapped the patrols, found a blind spot in their coverage, bought legal night vision and cameras, and set up digital fail-safes to dump evidence to journalists and the feds if I went dark. At 2:30 a.m., I snuck through the woods, waited for the shift change, and got close enough to photograph their operation: industrial pumps, chemical processors, computer screens with production data worth millions, everything the DNR guy had warned me about. But they caught on. Suddenly, searchlights swept the marsh, radios crackled, and teams swarmed out. I slipped into the freezing water, praying the reeds would hide my body heat. It was an hour before the patrols moved off, and I crawled shivering back to my truck, barely able to start the engine. I'd gotten my proof, but I knew they'd connect the dots. 3 hours later, Hammond's legal director called telling me I needed to come to the property for a security incident. It was a setup, sure, but also a chance to go public. By then, my evidence was already in journalists' hands, my phone was ready to live stream, and the authorities had been tipped off. At the gate, I faced Hammond and his team, now openly hostile. The director tried waving fake EPA orders. I demanded real credentials and permits, started streaming live. The tension broke when the FBI, state investigators, and the real EPA arrived, an absolute circus of flashing lights and shouting. Agent Crawford took control, read CSS the Riot Act, and in about 10 minutes, their entire operation collapsed. Their forgeries, their intimidation, their criminal enterprise exposed in front of half the county and thousands more watching online. Turns out my little dairy was just one of a dozen properties they'd targeted. $40 million a year in illegal extractions, water and mineral theft contamination that nearly poisoned thousands of families. CSS's top brass got prison 8 years for Hammond, 5 for the legal director, and even the technical guy cut a deal to roll on their international buyers. Dirty cops lost their jobs. The feds seized the assets, cleaned up the water, and I got a settlement that was more money than I'd ever dreamed, along with something worth even more, my property finally mine. The barn's been rebuilt. The water's safe. School kids visit to learn about environmental protection, and I help lead a regional group making sure nothing like this ever happens again. You want to know the craziest part? I started out just wanting a quiet place to farm and ended up fighting for a whole community's future. So here's my question for you. When does protecting what's yours mean? Standing up for what belongs to everyone. Would you have taken the money, or would you risk it all to do what's right? Let me know in the comments. Share your story. What would justice look like if it was your land, your water, your home? Because sometimes you don't get to choose the fight. Sometimes the fight chooses you.